What's up, guys? Welcome back to the ASVAB Domination Podcast. I am your host, Mickey Gaminol, and today I am doing a solo episode. This episode is all about how to dominate the ASVAB in 2026. So if you're trying to improve your score, this is a great episode to help you get the best possible score this year. All right. So the ASVAB is a skills test, not an intelligence test. And what that means is anyone can improve with the right approach. This episode, I want you to think of it as your roadmap for 2026. So if you're listening to this and wondering whether you could do well on the ASVAB in 2026, the answer is yes. Not hypothetically. Anyone can do better on the ASVAB this year. And since it's not an intelligence test and it's a skills test, that means that these skills can be trained. So you can improve those skills throughout the year, even if you've been bad at math your entire life, even if you failed and your score continues to get worse, you can still improve. I am certain of it. And I want you to leave this episode knowing this test is beatable if you're willing to work. So that's really the big differentiator. A lot of students want to improve their score on the ASVAB. And so what they'll end up doing is they'll watch YouTube videos or they'll take a bunch of practice tests. Maybe they'll even read a book, day after day after day. But if you're not absorbing the content, if you're not understanding the theory behind some of these math formulas or, auto mechanics, shop, all that stuff, if you're not learning the context behind how to solve these questions and all you're learning is A, B, A, B, A, B, and you're just memorizing how to pass a certain test, the ASVAB will seem a lot more difficult. What you need to understand is the concept behind each of those questions and what the question is actually asking in order to really do well on that ASVAB. And so that is what I would recommend. I'm going to start this episode with a myth. So just passing is expensive. So I know a lot of students that I've worked with in the past, all they want to do is get that 31 and join the military. And that's great. I think it's great that people want to join the military. Personally, when I did Peace Corps, I just joined the Peace Corps and said, send me wherever. And it was an incredible experience. It completely changed my life. And the same is true for you, dear listener. If you are focused on just barely getting into the military and doing whatever the military can give you, your life will be changed and you will be captaining your ship. You will be, going to a different place. So it is better to pass than not pass. I'll say that. However, if all you're doing is scoring the minimum to get in, your minimum scores are going to limit your jobs. They're going to limit your bonuses. And between those two, it's going to limit your long-term outcome. So if you do a 3 or a 6 year contract and you just take whatever job you can get, it's completely different than going in for a 3 or 6 year contract with a job in mind, knowing that you're going to go work in cybersecurity or healthcare. That completely changes your trajectory from just joining the military to do whatever. And I speak from experience. When I just did Peace Corps, I was a youth development volunteer, and I really believe in that mission. But it wasn't something that I really, was committed to when I went into the Peace Corps. As I came out of the Peace Corps, I realized, I really do, I would love to empower youth. I think youth development's a very important goal. But if I would have gone into the Peace Corps with more of an ambition of what do I want to do? How do I want to go into this new role? That's going to change the outcome. So just passing could, not waste the 3 years, but it could make it so that those 3 years aren't as useful to you as they could have been if you would have gotten a better score. So if your only goal is 31, you're not just aiming low, you're leaving jobs, bonuses, and leverage on the table. Your ASVAB score doesn't just get you into the military, it shapes what your career can become. And I've met too many soldiers who wish they'd taken the test seriously the first time. A quick story, I did used to work with somebody while I was working in security back in Las Vegas. He was a reservist. He let me know, man, I wish I would have met you, 5 years prior, because you could have helped me to improve my ASVAB score. And I wouldn't have just been whatever job it was, right, that he was doing in the reserves. That kind of story is the kind of story I want you to think about when you're studying for this test. If you can score really well, I would encourage you to spend the time to do it. It's definitely better to go in with 5 different choices instead of just going in with whatever the recruiter can give you. So that is one thing that I highly recommend. I've also spoken with other people in the past on this podcast who, were removed from the military because they didn't get the score that they needed. And again, same thing. If they would have taken the test more seriously, it would have completely changed their trajectory. And so that's just something to keep in mind, right? If you can get a really good score your first go around, it can completely change your life. All right. So let's go to some success stories. So effort does compound here. I want to talk quickly about my favorite student of all time. It was a student who had already saved up money because he knew that passing the ASVAB at a high level was something that was super important to his career. The reason that he knew this is because he'd already been in the military for 5 or 6 years. He was a sergeant. He had a bachelor's and a master's degree, but he never really learned the math. And that's not uncommon. A lot of people with bachelor's, master's degrees don't, learn the math, multiple choice math, or they do everything they can to stay away from it. And that's totally fine until it's not. So he was able to spend the time, spend the money, get the tutoring, and we were meeting very regularly. But one of my favorite students, he studied for almost a year, and not because he was bad at math, but because his goal mattered. He didn't rely on tutoring to save him. He showed up and prepared every time. So every single time that he took that test, or every single time that he showed up for class, he had 3, 5, 10 questions for me. And we couldn't get through all of them in an hour-long session, but I could get through 5 or 6, and he would save the remaining 4 for the next session. In every single sessions, his skills just grew and grew and grew. And that's where the fastest gains come from. The fastest gains come from students who study a little bit every day. I would much rather have students who study 30 minutes per day than a student who studies 8 hours on a Sunday, because it's so much harder to retain and remember the information that you're learning if you're just piling it all in at the end. So if you really want a good score, I would highly encourage you to study a little bit every single day. And think of it like what you're doing for your work right now, or what you're doing for school right now. You're probably dedicating many, many hours to either work or school. And the truth of it is what you do on this test can determine your fate so much more than what you're doing at work and school. Work and school can determine your fate too, but there's a lot more pieces at play. And, joining the military, ASVAB test is a very clear test that determines what your vocation in the military will be. This is a clear opportunity for you to go out and make bigger decisions with your life. And so that first story was a student I worked with. The next story is actually a student that I served with. He's not a student. He was a lieutenant that I served with. And this guy was crazy smart, right? Bachelor's degree. I call him a titan of tech, right? He was someone who was just incredibly proficient, and he's been on the podcast as well. He's someone who's super duper capable, right? An ASVAB test was going to be no problem for him. He's learned it, right? However, he spent every morning he studied for this test. He would do full-length practice tests regularly to get ready for this test. He took it super seriously, even though he didn't really have to. Like, he was going to score well enough to get whatever job he wanted, but he's the kind of person who didn't want to know that he could have done better. And so he put all of his efforts into making the most of that opportunity. So that's one thing that he'd mentioned to me, is most people never take full practice tests. So when they go in for the test, it feels overwhelming. If you look at 9 subtests on a regular basis, you're going to develop that muscle memory. You're going to be ready for those 9 subtests. But if you are only doing, learning one question at a time, learning about exponents, like, that's important too, right? Learning the technical skills of how averages work, that's important, but it doesn't help you to develop the stamina, right? It's like if you were training for a marathon and all you did was sprint, right? You did, 6 sprints a day training for this marathon. When it comes to the marathon, you're going to be toast, because 26 miles is way more than 6 sprints. So you want to build up that stamina through at least full-length practice subtests, and then if you can, get some all 9 subtests within. So I would encourage you to do that. This test build confidence, pacing, and mental endurance. And if you can train stamina, the test stops feeling scary. If you've taken 5 practice tests and you know that you already score 95 to 99, and you go in to take that final exam, you're so much more confident than if you've never taken a full practice test before. That's the other thing. Go ahead and take a full practice test so that you know what you're getting into. All right, so for this next section, I'm going to talk about resources. So, tools don't matter without consistency. I'm going to tell you about a couple different options. There are free and paid resources. There's recruiter tools. You can study on your own, you can study in groups. And then, of course, there's my programs, Gaminol Tutors. So, some of the free stuff you can use is March to Success, Grammar Hero, a few other tutoring channels on YouTube. There's definitely a lot of ASVAB stuff on YouTube, so I'd encourage you to check that out. And then there's other paid tutoring services as well, where you can do groups, you could do one-on-one, and that's all fine and good as well. There's also books, but be aware that if you buy one of those large ASVAB books, it may be intimidating to get a 700 page book in the mail and realize you want to go through that in a month. So just try to pace yourself when it comes to buying ASVAB books. And same with, even YouTube videos. It could be overwhelming. If you try to go through an entire YouTube ASVAB playlist, it might be, 1,000 hours of content or something like that. So definitely try to stay focused, right? What you need is clarity. You're not looking to be overwhelmed. So what I recommend, of course, my ASVAB domination booklet, it is much shorter than most of the ASVAB books out there, but it still covers the basics. It's going to cover your math and English and a little bit of science. And that's great because that's going to improve your GT score and open up more job options for you. It's also going to cover the foundational items so that you're not missing easy questions. That's really one of the biggest things, that if you're scoring low regularly, you're probably missing the same type of question multiple times. So you want to get a really good fundamental background of what parts are you missing. So there's no shortage of ASVAB resources. The real question is whether you're using them intentionally. Between free tools like March to Success and structured programs, you've got real options. March to Success is a great program. It's something that Army recruiters put out. It can be a little bit difficult to navigate the website, but there are some pretty solid practice tests and some pretty good content as far as learning how to do those sections. So March to Success is great. Just make sure that you're learning the content and not just passively guessing on exams, right? If you get a test question wrong, you want to go back to that test question and try to figure out, how did I get that wrong? What was the mistake that I made? And then the best resource is the one you'll actually use consistently. And so that's why I recommend an ASVAB tutoring program. If you pay for one of my courses, you're actually going to go through, sit through the videos, try the practice test, and try to figure out what you got wrong. And you can always send those questions to me. You can bring them to Mini Quiz Monday. You can meet with me offline. I'm happy to help anybody who's ever purchased anything from Gaminol Tutors. I want all of you guys to succeed. All right. Mindset. Pay yourself first. Okay, cool. So this is one of my favorite sections. Basically, ASVAB prep could be tied to life ownership and self-respect. So most people give all their energy to work and none to themselves. If you're studying early in the morning, that is a self-investment. If you're studying before you go to work or after you go to work, that's time that you're paying to yourself. And that's something that's hard to find. Most people are just, showing up late for work. They want to be the first ones to leave. And then they're going to some party or they're going to go buy a car or whatever. They got like 10 things going on and everybody's vying for your attention to go do those 10 things. But if you can put time into yourself by studying, that is a self-investment and that can help you long term. ASVAB prep, I want you to treat it as a life habit, not as punishment. Don't beat yourself up because you scored poorly on the ASVAB. Remind yourself that you're investing in yourself. You're spending the time to learn the skills to grow your career options for your future. And that is huge. That's something that most people are never going to do. So a couple quotes on this. Most people give 40 plus hours a week to their job and have 0 hours to their future. Studying early isn't about discipline. It's about paying yourself first. I really like that one. I really like setting the tone for the day. Like for me personally, if I make it to the gym in the morning, I know that every decision that I make for the rest of the day is going to be more about helping me than hurting me. And that's something that's super valuable for me. If you don't intentionally invest in yourself, life will spend that time for you. And that's 100% true. If you're not, walling off some amount of time to work on your goals, other things will come up to fill that time. If it's Netflix or if it's, some, racing club or whatever it is. I mean, there's other self-development things that can cut into your time as well, which is great, but you really got to prioritize how you want to spend your time and how you want to intentionally invest in yourself. Anyway, I would encourage all of you guys to start small and start now. So progress beats perfection. Don't worry about getting everything 100% right off the bat. Hope that you get a couple questions wrong. I tell students who come into my classes, if you're not getting something wrong, it means there's no point in you being here. So if you're getting something wrong, it means there's something that we can work on and we're able to improve from there. So always remember, progress beats perfection. 30 minutes a day is fine. If you can't give yourself, 2 hours every single day to study, 30 minutes a day is great. And then last but not least, always feel free to check out my stuff at asvabdomination.com, gaminaltutors.com. And remember, there's a lot of free options out there as well. So don't forget on those. You don't need to be naturally good at math or English. All you need is a plan and reps. 30 minutes a day beats waiting for motivation every single time. And if this matters to you, start today, not someday. One of my favorite quotes is, a year from now, you'll wish you started today. So if you're listening to this and you know you need to go study for the ASVAB, go study for the ASVAB. Get after it. And with that, feel free to attend my mini quiz Mondays. They're Mondays at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, all over. ASVABdomination.com. That's where my website, where my podcast is hosted. And I'd love to interact with you there. So Happy New Year, guys. I hope everybody has a great new year, and I hope everybody gets the score that they want. Best of luck.